You're listening to the No Labels, No Limits podcast with best-selling author Sarah Box, where you get the inside scoop on the steps action takers and decision makers take to align their purpose to their principles and achieve their goals in business and life. We focus on the mantra, no labels, no limits, no excuses. Each week, you'll hear from remarkable guests who have overcome challenges and obstacles to succeed in the face of adversity. By listening to their stories, you'll get practical tips, tools, and resources you can implement today to bust through your own internalized prisons of worry and doubt. And now, without further ado, please welcome your commanding coach with plenty of chutzpah and heart, Sarah Box.
Hey there, No Labels, No Limits podcast listeners. This is your host, Sarah Box of the No Labels, No Limits show, a podcast all about breaking through limiting labels and beliefs so that you can live more fully, all out into who you are meant to be, and actually just enjoy the heck out of life and our ride right here. Today, I have the pleasure of co-hosting our interview, our discussion with our guest, with my friend, Ken Fay. Ken is, in my heart, a humanitarian. He is, in fact, an award-winning filmmaker, and he is a star chocolate chip cookie maker. Although I've only seen the evidence of it, I've never received one of his cookies. So, Ken, how are you doing today?
Great. And I know exactly what I have to do after this conversation. I have to bake you some cookies and send them down to you.
You got my address, right?
I do.
I want to make sure you don't have the P.O. box.
Exactly right.
Because I only go there like every 10 days. Okay. So anyway, I am looking forward, all jokes aside, to co-hosting this week with you, because I know you've known our guest for many years. So you're going to know some extra questions we can ask. But for our audience, I want to say that we're going to be talking with Southpaw's founder and trainer, Joe Tetro. So Southpaw is a company whose goal is to provide fast, measurable sales results using science-based selling and a combination of social psychology, neuroscience, and behavioral economics. And if anybody has been listening to this podcast for a long time, all of that stuff super interesting to me, although I don't claim extreme knowledge in behavioral economics. So Joe Tetro, though, has worked for some of the top sales organizations in the world. Think about this: Motorola, NBC Universal, Spectrum Reach, and he's been recognized as Sales Manager of the Year by the Video Advertising Bureau. That's a big group. And he's a certified selling skills trainer, certified business coach, member of the Sandler Training Presidents Club, and he graduated from the Center for Creative Leadership Development Program. That is a mouthful, Joe.
Kept me busy.
Yeah, you're a busy guy. But this is what I like. On a more personal note about Joe, he's an amateur boxer. He's currently reading Get Your Life Back by John Eldridge, and he's studying and working with Kevin Mohler, a highly regarded, globally recognized entrepreneur who has built 6 companies totaling over $100 million in revenue by the time he's 30. So Joe surrounds himself with inspirational people, including my pal Ken, and he's made some way in the world that we can all learn from. So with that, let's welcome our guest today, Joe. How are you doing, Joe?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for having me, Sarah. Hello, Ken.
Hey there, Joe. Good to see you again.
So as our listeners know, I like to start by asking a similar question of all of our guests. And is there something that you do daily that keeps you focused on your big goals, your dreams, and keeps you off of just following what everybody else wants from you?
I start every day with 2 items, and they're kind of meshed together sometimes, but a morning devotional, and kind of keeps me grounded spiritually, or I call Ken. And the other one is about 8 minutes of meditation. And because I'm so type A, 8 minutes is about all I could get in.
But you're regular with it?
I am, very much so. And if I don't do it, I miss it.
Yeah.
I know that I'm a little off kilter if I don't have that grounding time.
So Ken, you have a regular thing you do in the morning?
Yes, I do. I actually, I take a look at nature. As a filmmaker, I frame the world in all sorts of ways. So I spend a little meditative time myself in the mornings, and I will be inspired by the nature around me. And that kind of gets my brain in the right place, to tell a story.
It's nice to be grounded before we engage with the world.
Oh, absolutely.
So, Joe, let's focus in on you a little bit and a little bit of your backstory. Will you share with us kind of your past? I mean, you've got a bunch of experience and awards and acknowledgments for everything you've done, but what led you to create your own company? And part B, once you do that, talk a little bit about the gift for reading and its impact, because I know that's threaded throughout the work that you do.
It very much is. I will tell you first how we got here. Almost 30 years in sales management, sales leadership. The very best part of what I did was helping people to grow, was helping them to change the quality of their life, was helping them to improve their personal situation, and kind of helping them unearth their why. That was the best part of what I did. Unfortunately, what I spent the bulk of my time doing was poring over spreadsheets. And it's just not the way I wanted to spend the rest of my life. I understand the need for it, and we certainly do a fair amount of that here, but I didn't want that to be my mission. And then I guess the reading part, which is, I don't remember us talking about the reading part, but I feel the ability to read the people that you're with, the people that you train, the people that you live with, the people that are your significant others. Being able to really get a good read on who and what they are, what their why is, what motivates them, what affirmations are necessary for them, because we all have a desire for some sort of affirmation. To really get that feel, I think makes a tremendous amount of difference and saves you a tremendous amount of time in getting from point A to point B. So I use it with people that we train. We talk to them and really try to get to know them to the point that we feel that we've got an insight to them. We do it with people that we sell to, and as a sales trainer, we sell our services, right? So being able to read what the real need of my client is, my prospect is, really makes a world of difference, because we all get phone calls or emails or messages that say, hey, I'm looking for this. If you do a little reconnaissance, sometimes you find that's not really what they're looking for.
So did you come by the ability to read people? Was that innate to you, Joe, or did you develop that skill?
I believe that it's a God-given gift, but I also believe it can be harnessed and strengthened. And I think that's done through experience. I think it's done through time. Now, certainly, I ended up in management very, very quickly. I had a very quick, bright, successful sales career, and all of a sudden they said, "You're our boy. You're going to run the place," and that's what I wanted. I wanted to move ahead. I wanted to be in those positions, but I never really got the time to have loads and loads of clients. I'm actually a little envious of some of these folks that have spent 20 years selling for the same company, and they have hundreds and hundreds of clients that they know intimately. And I don't really have that because I've managed people. I've worked on the people that built those relationships.
Do you think of the people you've managed as your clients, though? Do you build relationships with them in that way?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think one of the things I'm most proud of is there are people that I managed 25 years ago that call for advice today. or call to wish me a happy birthday. So those are great things, and vice versa. How often do we keep track of, a supervisor, boss, whatever from, 20 years ago? And I'm lucky enough to have that experience.
I can vouch for that too. I worked alongside Joe many, many moons ago. I didn't work for him necessarily, but I worked in a department that supported his department, and he and I are here we are with you. So yeah, it's definitely that kind of a thing. Relationship building is huge and massive. Joe, I would ask you, do you see a difference in how relationship building is done now from where you started it? Has there been a change in the culture of business climate?
I believe firmly that it is not given the priority today that it once was. If you think back to, the Zig Ziglar days, and I kind of refer to that, there's been 3 different eras of sales. And if you look at that consultative era of sale, where Ziglar comes from, it was about building a relationship. It was about building a community. That is starting to go by the wayside. People are not as interested in building a relationship. They want to send an email, send a text, hit send, and watch the business fall out of the funnel. Yeah. So I believe that the need for a relationship is still very much there. You want to earn somebody's business for a decade, not for a day. So you really need to know them, intimately in order to be able to take care of them and solve their problems. I believe that many management processes today eliminate that piece.
The relationship building.
Yes, ma'am.
And why is that? Is that for saving
Speed.
Time, or?
It's speed.
Speed.
It
so
really
we
is.
Lost something for the need for speed has lost something for us.
You could talk to anybody in any of the arts, and to a certain extent, I believe that sales is an art, doing it properly. I mean, there's a science to it, but there's also an art to it. But if you look at what it takes in order to build those long-term relationships, it's time. And time is in great demand. And most management today, most organizations that I deal with, I'm dealing with an organization right now that still, to me, it looks like I'm walking into the boiler room, if you remember that term. It really reminds me of a financial boiler room. Just turn them and burn them, keep going. No, don't worry about the relationship, get the money and go. They don't ever worry about the second sale. To me, I always believe that if you can build that relationship, you're going to be a steady stream of revenue for me, if not personally, through referrals, which is another kind of dead piece of salesmanship. I mean, how often, I believe the statistic is 70 some odd percent of people say that they would be more than willing to give a referral, and less than 20% of sales professionals ask for a referral.
Is that the gap, is the asking, Joe?
Yes, ma'am. It is. It absolutely is. I had a young lady that worked with me years ago, and she was one of the better salespeople I ever had. And when I would say, "Did you ask?" Whatever the question was, did you ask? She would say, "I should have." What are they going to do? Eat me? They can't eat me, can they? And I was like, no, they can't. All you got to do is ask. So I still hear her voice in the back of my head. Well, they can't eat you. So, and I use that in training all the time, and it always gets a chuckle, but we don't ask because we're afraid. And why would we be afraid?
Why do you think folks are afraid?
No, you go, Ken.
No, sorry, sir. Yeah. So why do you think folks are afraid? In essence, would you say that we're all salespeople in essence, in some way, right? Whether we're selling an idea, a thought. In my world, I'm selling a script. So is everyone a salesperson in a way? And why can't we tap into that and what you're finding? What's the barrier?
Ken, I've seen your work over the years, and I wouldn't refer you as much as I do if I didn't think the quality of that work was outstanding. Well, how many times have you brought the script to somebody and had sweaty palms when you handed it to them?
Absolutely. Yep. Every time.
But based on what I just said and based on the accolades you've received in your career, you probably don't need to have those sweaty palms, do you?
No, right. Very true.
But it's human nature. We have a fear, we have a fear of rejection. So many people are. I always said that fear of failure drove me. And it was always a good thing for me. It may have driven me to be successful in what I was trying to do, but it kept me up an awful lot of nights. So you learn that maybe it wasn't the right thing for my psyche in the long run. So I believe we all want to be people pleasers.
Joe, has that changed for you over the years?
It absolutely has.
What did you do to help? What did you do to help shift that perspective?
Someone somewhere along the line asked me the question, how much energy have you used fighting off your demons? And I of course, didn't have the answer, but I did say, boy, I'm tired all the time.
Yeah.
And so, and please do not believe that I have this all figured out, because I don't. We all slip back.
Yeah.
But I do know that I am less taxed if I just say, all right, Lord, we're going in and we're going to give it our best shot.
That's my favorite thing to say. I did that before going. I mean, it sounds weird. Like, I don't like going to like bridal showers and stuff. I don't know why. They just always put me on edge. I think it's because they do those silly games. I don't want to disparage anybody's bridal shower. However, I remember calling my husband before going into one saying, okay, I'm going in now. I'll call you when I'm out. And he started laughing. He said, is it that bad? I says, I'm only doing this because of the relationships I have with the people in that room. I'm going in, I'm coming out. But it's that kind of, but what a waste of energy. I could have just gone, I'm going to go hang out with some folks and then I'll be done. And no, I'm not playing stupid games. But we do weird head games with ourselves. So, which makes me want to ask you a slightly different question. I mentioned, and we'll come back to sales because I want to ask you some of how things have changed. You talk about the 3 stages of it, and you talked about the Zig Ziglar, or not stages, but kind of how it's been evolving.
Different eras.
Yeah, eras. Yeah, thank you. So how would you describe the era we're in now?
It's interesting you asked that. We went from what I refer to as the white shoe era, right? When that fella showed up on your front door with home goods. I'm
old enough to remember that. So yeah.
I remember my grandmother, buying plates and knives and, sundries, if you will, from this fella. And if we spent another couple of minutes, I'd come up with his name. But I remember we were excited when he came to the door. Grandma was getting something new. But we went from that period to the period where we asked people a whole lot of questions under the guise of trying to diagnose their problem. But what we were really doing was we were rooting around for pain, and we were using that pain against you. Today, your consumer is so much more intelligent. They're so much more informed than they ever were before. The statistic today is that by time a salesperson speaks to a prospect, they are roughly 70% of the way towards their decision. So they just really are going to ask you whether it comes in red and blue, and can you get it on Thursday? I mean, that's kind of where they're at. They've already done all the research.
So that's what I was going to ask. How did they get to the 70%? So it's independent research,
Absolutely.
Talking with people.
We all do it. I am not. I do an awful lot by my gut. I am not a very detailed, researcher when it comes to personal purchases. I do a little bit of looking. I ask myself what I feel about the situation. And then I ask acquaintances, do you have one of these? How does it work for you? Would you buy it again?
Yeah.
So that's about as far as I go. But I'm not the norm. The norm is those folks that, spend, multiple hours on multiple sites doing, pretty in-depth research, especially if it's a significant purchase. And they spend a good amount of time doing that research so that by the time I see them, and they know more about the process than I do.
So how do you, from a sales perspective, and to Ken's earlier question, I do think each of us, whether we're a member of a family or we're running a business, to some degree, we are selling our ideas or our viewpoints to get other people on board with us. So given that, right, what you just described as the more norm environment we're in today, how are people who quote unquote consider themselves salespeople, how are they adapting to that? And what is working best? Because I know I'm flooded with stuff and I'm thinking, are you kidding me? You didn't spend any time in knowing anything about me.
Take a quick step away for a second and address what you just said. And I think Ken actually knows this story. I was solicited on social media by somebody that wanted to talk to me about how they could help my business. And at the appointed time, the phone rings and a very pleasant voice was on the other end. And the first words were, "So tell me about your business." And my response was, "You tell me about my business." And when that person said, "I don't know," I said, "Then I think we're done here." Because if you didn't take the time to figure out who you're going to talk to and about what, then what are we doing here? My time is valuable. Your time is valuable. I tell that to, and I will, I have a soft spot for a salesperson that calls me. So I'll talk to any salesperson. And Ken has seen it. I've been known to give advice on that phone call. Hey, what you should ask me now is, or where we should go from here is, I've done that many times. I usually ask first if they would mind if I gave them a pointer. Sometimes they hang up, but sometimes they say, "Sure." I said, "Well, I'm looking for these three things, right? So wouldn't this be the next question you'd ask me?" "Ooh, that's a good idea." Or, "Yeah, well, it's not on my script." I've gotten that too. And I said, "Well, maybe you should suggest it's on the script."
Yeah.
So with that, Joe.
Yes, sir.
With that, would you say that that's kind of how you can read people, right? That person should have been reading you or get to know you a little bit more and engaging. And I know with you, when you're interacting with others over the phone, in person, over the net, you're not just reading their emotions, but you've already looked at their business, where they're at, what they could use as tools. I know you're developing, you use the science of selling. And I know you're integrating it with the art of storytelling, and you're figuring it out, right? You figure out the puzzle. So they just have to say red or green at that point, right?
Yeah, I think that, knowing who you're dealing with, you don't want your client to be a number. You want to know, who you're dealing with, why you're dealing with it. Understand what their why is. Mm-hmm. Understanding what their pain point is not a bad thing, as long as we don't turn around and use it as a weapon.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a kind of interesting example that happened to me not that long ago. Somebody was working me very well and said, well, hey, if we were able to do this, what would it mean to you? It would mean this. And what would you do with that increased revenue? I would do this or this. And when we got further down the road and they said, press hard, there's 5 copies. I said, I'm not there yet. I said, but I do appreciate your time. I'm going to do a little reconnaissance and run it by the rest of my folks. And we're going to go from there. I'm available next Tuesday. Does that work for you? I'm closing them for the next appointment. And he said to me, well, Joe, if you don't jump on this right away, how's Sally going to get her braces? Or how are you going to pay for grad school, or so, whatever my hot button was. And when he went there, I was insulted.
Yeah.
I was insulted.
That's that fear of missing out mentality, the FOMO.
Yeah, and it can work, but I don't know how many cars I've bought in my life, but most of them I've bought. A couple of them I was sold. And I remember being sold like it happened yesterday.
Describe the difference between that for our listeners, Joe, because I actually, coming from a family in the car sales business, know the difference. And I've walked out of showrooms because I know the difference. So tell me, or tell all of us, the distinction between buying and being sold.
The second new vehicle I ever bought, I had now owned a new vehicle. So now I knew what I wanted, right? I didn't know when I bought the first one at 19 or 20 years old. I didn't know. Now I knew. I drove this thing for 3 years. I knew exactly what I wanted in a vehicle. And I went in and I said, I need this, 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 and I need to pay this. If we can do all those things, we're done. And she said, I can do, as a young lady, she said, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. I can't do this, I can't do that, and I can't charge you that. And I said, no, I made a list, and that's kind of, that's what I want. That's what I'm looking for. And I can go look for it elsewhere. I appreciate your time. And she said, you don't really want this. Because if you wanted it, those little things wouldn't hold you back. And as a 20 or 21-year-old, I said, I'll show you who's not going to be held back. Where do I sign? Right. And, I drove my shiny red pickup truck home. And I was like, wow, she sold this to me. I didn't buy this. She sold it to me because I was ready to go off and, work the process elsewhere until I got, my list covered. She sold it to me.
Did you have a different feeling after that? So what I'm asking is, like, when you bought your car, the first one, and then one was sold to you, did you have a different emotional or satisfaction level from those two different experiences? What was that?
I don't remember how long exactly I kept that truck, but I do know that I was a little angry about it every day. Mm-hmm. And it was beautiful. And I would, I'd go out into the driveway and I'd say, a
little bit of resentment there,
a little buyer's remorse, maybe. I was like, this didn't go down the way I wanted it to. And I had a bad taste in my mouth. And I went elsewhere when it was time to buy the new vehicle.
Which goes back to your earlier point about relationships, right? Because if you'd had a relationship, you wouldn't have been worked, right? You would have been able to say, this is what I want. It would have been a true thing instead of like, well, if you really wanted this. Those are very manipulative things. And I think that's why people, at least in my experience, when I talk to people, and it makes them uncomfortable, right?
Sure.
When in truth, if I'm helping you or you're helping me as a salesperson get something that's really going to benefit me, you are in it for my best interests as well as your business interests. But really, you don't want to sell me something I'm not going to benefit from or be resentful about because I'm not coming back to you.
No, and it's very much, and it might sound corny, but it's very much like writing a prescription. It's very much like being a doctor. We're going to look at what ails you, and we're going to find a way to make it go away. That's my goal. My goal is to make it go away for you, and then everybody wins.
Yeah,
and then
it's a lot more fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm available for the next solution, and I'm available for the referral, and I'm available for extended, extended uses within your organization.
So let's summarize some of the points that you've learned over the years, or even share today, about like if I'm learning or wanting to develop my sales skills and abilities, what are some of the mindsets or changes I need to make or embrace so that I can actually own the process, start to end, all the way through?
Well, building your sales muscle it's doable. Salespeople are not born. There are people that are a little bit more predisposed to being able to go in that direction, but they're not born, because they, just like any other skill, they build it. They build it based on, practice, time, use, and education. 80% of salespeople have never read a sales book.
Really?
80%. Now, how do you do that for a living and never read a sales book? I don't understand that. And not all sales books are great. But if you can get one thing out of each one, that's a benefit. But let me go back. I would say, have a genuine desire to help. I think that's very big. Realize that it takes more than a smile and a shoe shine. That was the expression we were taught years ago. It's all about a smile and a shoe shine, and it's not. It just isn't. So it's not about that. There's no magic words. There are no magical phrases. There are not 5 steps to anything, or 7 steps, or 13 steps. I always tell people when we begin a big training class, I always say, if I tell you there are 7 steps or 9 steps to anything, I want you to throw something at me from over there. And they chuckle, but because it's going to be different for all of us. Yeah. You train for a marathon differently than I train for a marathon. We might have read the same book about how to do it, but we train differently because our bodies are different. Yeah. Our motivation is different. Our lung capacity is different. There's something different about each of us. So there's no magical answer to anything. I do believe in the old adage that, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen twice as much as you speak. You should be listening. About 70% of your conversation should be you listening. I think if you listen, you're organized, you have a genuine desire to help, and you're not afraid to build a long-term relationship, it's a wonderful career.
So that's how it sounds like. That's all mindset then. And so when you train people, and you train a lot of groups and teams, and you've gone into teams that were kind of failing, and you've gone in there and helped straighten them back up again, what are you finding is the common denominator in that shift for those folks? How do you get into their psyche and say, okay, here's the mindset piece?
There is a genuine fear of human contact. And we have to use that they won't eat you concept in order to get you past that. But there's an awful lot of folks that, they'd rather just text you. They'd rather just send you an email. They're afraid to pick up the telephone. Cold calling is not dead. I use multiple tiers. I will I will email you, I will call you, I will text you, I will send you a piece of snail mail. By time you actually speak to me, I've already touched you 7 or 8 times. So you have some idea of who this crazy Joe guy is. You might not know, might not recall or be able to regurgitate any of my story, but you've heard the name, you've seen the face, and that's a big piece of it, Ken. The trying to wipe away that fear of contact. And some of that may be generational. I
was going to ask that if you see that in folks who just prefer the more distance type of communication.
I don't 100% subscribe to that. I very often hear people say, well, this group, right? They named it, this group, they're afraid to talk to people. They just want to, be in their mom's basement and use their laptops, and generalizations, as we know, are not usually 100% accurate. I mean, they come from someplace, but they're not always 100% accurate. So, but I do see that the skill of selling is less encouraged. Building the skill, building that muscle is less encouraged than just churning numbers. It really comes down to I got involved in using a CRM way back in the old days, back when Acton Goldmine were the CRMs that were around. Remember those?
Yes.
And I loved them because it was better than having a little card file, right? But that is not what runs your business. That CRM doesn't run their business. I know a very accomplished sales professional that worked for an organization that said to him, "Hey, you didn't make enough calls today." And he said, "I made 3 great calls." And they said, "Yeah, but you were supposed to make X amount of calls today." And he says, "Do you want me to make X amount of calls? Or do you want me to make 3 great ones?" Because the closing percentage on those great calls is going to be so much higher. The conversion rate is going to be so much higher.
Which takes me back to what you said earlier in the conversation about the speed of business and the metrics of it. Because I think we can miss like if all we're looking at is quote unquote the metrics, and I agree with you, metrics are important. They don't tell the whole story or the value of the activity, because I can churn out 100 calls, but are you going to get anything from them? Or am I just checking a list, right?
Steakums and filet mignon are both beef. Could you make a choice?
Absolutely.
I don't know. Do they still make steakums? I don't know. But they're both beef, supposedly.
That's the question we'd need to do a little research on. But yes, you could make a choice. So I want to go a little more personal with you, if you will, as we start wrapping this up. Talk to us about being an amateur boxer, why you do that, and what it has taught you about life and living. Just some key takeaways from that. I'm really interested in that.
Been interested in boxing my whole life. My grandfathers were both very interested in boxing. But they would tell me stories about, the old fighters from the old days. And we would very often all be piled on the couch watching the fights when the fights were on free television, when they were on regular network television. And so I was just always very interested in it. And I dabbled as a young person. And then I went to college and I ended up playing baseball in college. So it went away. And then, a handful of years ago, I decided that I might want to compete, really compete again, because I always did the work, the physical work.
So you stayed up with it, the training,
just for the exercise.
Yeah.
There's a lot of working out that bores me, but I don't know, for some reason, I don't mind hitting a bag, so, I just said, I'm going to try this. And and I found a gym and I went into it, and I found that it's really a microcosm of the whole rest of your life. It really is. You don't play boxing. You play other sports. You don't play boxing. It's do or die in there. And it's not all about being a tough guy. It really isn't. It very much is the sweet science. It very much can be. But if you look at really successful trainers and fighters over the years, and I always quote Customato, who trained Mike Tyson, he said millions of things that I have jotted all over the place. But one of the ones that I always remembered was that the hero and the coward both experience the exact same fear. It's just what they do with that fear that makes all the difference. And
how is it? How do they handle it differently?
Well, fight or flight, right? So, I'm going to walk through this, or let me find a way to get away from it. You've probably heard somewhere along the line, whether you're a fight fan or not, don't back up. You don't want to be backed up. Don't give any corner. That's right. Yeah. So once you start backing up, your chances of, coming out of that thing in good shape are kind of tough. But there's a lot of Teddy Atlas, who was also a trainer of Mike Tyson's when he was very young, and he's trained a couple of champions. Teddy Atlas says that there's a moment in every fight where you make a choice and you decide whether you want to continue or you don't want to continue. And what you find out is that if you decide you can't continue, you don't want to continue, you don't want to keep moving forward because it hurts too much or because I'm too scared, you do find that you probably could have endured the pain. You probably could have lasted the next, few minutes. But what you do is you've sold yourself on the fact that, hey, I'm not going to make it another 3 minutes. Yeah. And then you back off. Then you find a nice place to lay down. And that's, and then you have to live with that. Yeah, I was just going to say that then colors your next choice when you hit a barrier, right? Are you going to keep moving into it? Or are you going to go, well, I can't do that, it's too hard or whatever? Do you relate to that?
Oh, absolutely do. No, there's a lot of that in there. In my world, when I'm coming up with concept for content creation, I have to continually move forward. I can't back up into either an old mindset, an old idea. I need to constantly be moving forward to the next, the new, a different way of telling a story that might be a story everybody knows, but just tell it a little bit differently. So I have to dig in and find that ground, and then create. And I'm finding that I'm learning lately too, a lot from Joe. And one of those things is that there really is a science and an art to selling. And being a storyteller, career storyteller, I always thought it was all about the art of storytelling. I never mixed the science of sales in there, but I think that's an interesting connect. And I could see from Joe's point of view with the boxing analogy, that is life, but it can be sales. I mean, if you look at sales as a big giant ring, right, Joe, and you're in there with your client, you're not fighting them. You're fighting with them to get something that they may need. And they're not sure where to step in the ring, right? Absolutely. I personally find it a little distasteful, and I don't know what other word to use, but I find it a little distasteful that people look at business or look at sales as war, as a battle. To me, it's really all about helping. It's all about trying to help somebody better themselves. If you better yourself, we all win. I have an acquaintance that just finished a book on leadership. And if I had it, I would hold it up so that he could get a plug, but I don't have it in front of me.
But Eddie Mack, if you get a chance to look for Eddie Mack's leadership book, Eddie says that it's not, it's all about just trying to help the guy next to you. That's all it's about. It's really not about me winning, you losing. See, we can both win. It doesn't have to be win-lose.
No, I totally agree, but I don't think that's where we start. I think we're taught that it is a zero-sum game.
Mm-hmm.
One wins, one loses, or you gain and I lose a bit, whether it's the whole thing and I don't think that's true.
I 100% agree. And just go back to the boxing thing for a minute. Whether you're a fan or you're not a fan, we've all seen that hug at the end of the fight, where two guys that were just beating the tar out of each other are now hugging each other. Can't tell me they didn't both win.
Well, and there's a respect level, I would think, right?
Absolutely. And winning isn't, the guy that gets his hand raised necessarily. Sometimes winning is just making it through the day.
Going the distance.
And that's what it's about.
Yeah.
I remember when I was young, I went in, I had an opportunity to spar with somebody that fought for the heavyweight championship of the world. And he was a big man, and I was a, 20-something-year-old kid and probably 40 or 50 pounds lighter than him. And he let me hit him. And when he let me hit him, at one point he let me hit him and he said, he goes, "Hey, that was great." And I said, "Well, why aren't you laying down then?"
How come you're still standing?
Generally, if I do this to somebody, they lay down. But he let me win. We both won. He is a hero in my mind today because he let a kid come in and have his minute of glory against a guy that fought for the heavyweight championship of the world. Fought Muhammad Ali.
Whoa.
Whoa. I fought a guy that fought Muhammad Ali. Now, I only fought him for 3 minutes, and he decided not to hit me very hard. So it wasn't the same thing, but we both won, didn't we?
Absolutely.
He got to display his humanity, and I got to have my brush with greatness.
As you're talking, I'm really reflecting that even in the stories you tell, it is a sales, right? You're really letting us see who Joe is and how you approach the world and how people, it's people either resonate or don't. They either feel comfortable or they don't. And I believe that it's really a lot of how people show up, not necessarily how slick they are, how perfect everything is, but how sincere are they? How knowledgeable are they about my personal needs or what's trying to happen? And then what's their commitment to that level of success happening, right? Or is it just like, until I make the sale? But someone who's like that guy, like, I want this kid to experience success at this moment, to feel good, because you took that out and you're still talking about it today, these years later, right? It made a huge impact on you.
I don't want to tell you how many years it's been, but it's been a lot.
You don't want to mark how old you are? Come on now. No, but I had a boss that did that for me many times, and I still bring his management philosophy forward because it changed my life and what I thought was possible. So that's a unique thing.
Being firm with your team is okay.
Yeah.
I had probably the best boss I ever had said to me, "It's okay to use a hammer, but I suggest you wrap it in velvet first.
And make sure it's the tool for the job."
Yeah.
So as we're wrapping this up, Joe, I have two questions. One is just something tangible that anybody listening here, who, whether they're, they might say, well, I'm not a quote unquote salesperson. If you are writing a grant for a nonprofit, you're a salesperson. If you are, trying to get a teenager to understand something that needs to happen for the benefit of the family, you are a salesperson. So regardless of where we are in our life, can you share like one or two steps that you think anyone could take or everyone should take? I know you're not a step person, but if there are a couple of things you think that we could take that would improve the results we get from our sales work?
Sure. We're going to use the word check, and we're going to use it in two different ways. Okay. Check your motivation. Why am I doing this? Why am I telling my daughter that she needs to be in at 10? Why am I telling her that she needs to go to college? Why am I telling, her to eat better food? Okay. What is your motivation behind it? The other one is check your ego. Check your ego at the door, because it is not about a win-lose. It's about a win-win. And, I came up in the 80s when win-win was the terminology that everybody used. And I don't think I want to let go of that, because it really needs to be a win-win. So if you check your ego, everybody wins.
Ken, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I would say, Joe, then that makes me feel like now that sales is empowering the person you're with. It's empowering your client as much as it is for anything else then. So with a win-win mentality, then if you can infuse that into your sales team or into you as a salesperson, then you're just lifting up the person you're talking to. You're empowering them to make a decision.
I would suggest that your balance of power in a sales situation is more equal today than it's ever been. I think there was a time when, due to lack of knowledge, the salesperson may have had the upper hand. And now that has balanced out somewhat, because they know as much, if not more, about the product and the process than I do. I know whether I could help them, and I have case studies on those that I have helped, and that may be beneficial for them. So I think that if you want to say that we do the empowering, I don't know. I think that maybe evolution has allowed folks to be a little bit more on equal footing.
I love it. I like the check your ego, check your motivation. I think that goes a long way in life, right?
I agree.
And, it's easy to say, check your ego, check your motivation. If you're doing some inner work, it's not quick. You have to get real honest with yourself sometimes and going, yeah, this isn't about helping them. That's about making something easier for me. So then you have to rewind and rethink. So, Joe, what is the best way for folks to connect with you? Because I just know that for some of our listeners today, you're the voice they needed to hear. So where should they go to know more about you, your work, how you might be able to help them either as individuals or as companies?
Well, they can email us at info@southpawselling.com, or they can visit us on the web at www.southpawselling.com.
Okay.
And,
so we'll put those show notes in so people don't have to remember it. Oh, absolutely. Ken, any parting words of wisdom from you and your knowledge of Joe, things that you want us to take away with us?
I've always been an advocate of storytelling, as you know, and I've been telling Joe for a while now to write a book. He's got so many stories and so many situations. You got to write that stuff down. So I would again say, Joe, you got to write this down, man.
You have a title for his book, Ken, because I know you come up with that stuff in your sleep.
I'm thinking selling and telling, only because, the science of selling and the art of storytelling, and the mix of that makes, but, all about relationships and how to make it a better place, as Joe's saying, I'm with it. So Joe, yeah, you got to write that down.
All right, Ken, how about you write that with me?
All right.
I'll do the selling, you do the telling. How does that sound?
Sounds good. Sounds like it's always been that way.
I think that would be a powerful book. Absolutely.
Well, sales and marketing, right?
It is sales and marketing, but from a more heart-centered place, right? So I endorse both of the ideas. Let me know when it's done. Let's do a different conversation around that. Gentlemen, I want to say thank you both very much for both coming on together, for sharing this time with me and our audience. Ken, as always, it's great to spend time with you. And Joe, it's great to get to know you more.
Sarah, thank you so much for having me. And it's always wonderful to speak with Ken.
Great to see you both.
Thanks.
You've been listening to the No Labels, No Limits podcast with best-selling author, change agent, and strategic vision coach, Sarah Box. You can grab the show notes and find out how to work with Sarah at sarahbox.com/No Labels, No Limits podcast. We'd love this podcast to reach as many people as possible. So please remember to rate, leave a 5-star review, and share the podcast with someone you think would get value from this conversation. Until next time, keep taking those daily action steps to align your purpose to your principles and achieve your goals in business and life.